It is the final word Christmas Day daily. Adam Collins at my parents' place in Birregurra in Western Victoria. Bharat Sundaresan in the suburbs of Melbourne, having just spent the morning at the MCG. We've done many of these episodes released on Christmas Day with our interviews over the years, but I don't think we've ever recorded on the 25th of
Oh,
December.
wow.
So we're breaking new ground on the Can't Stop, Won't Stop front. You've got the Santa hat on. Compliments of the season to you, my friend.
Compliments of the season to you, Adam Collins. And wow, like I can't believe we've not done this before on Christmas Day. And look, I brought the spirit and I took the spirit with me to the MCG this morning. And it was much appreciated by most of the Australian players who I did notice, Pat Cummins in particular. And they all agreed when they asked me for the reason that I had the hat on. I said, look, I'm here traveling with my family. So one of my nieces said, well, Uncle B, you need to wear the hat to work, or you need to wear the hat. And I said, well, I'm going to work. And she said, who said you're a grown up? And it was a sentiment
True.
that everyone in the Australian camp agreed with.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. And so you've been doing your thing down there. We've just done presents here, lunch not far away. And yeah, you've been at the press conferences. You've been sort of playing peacemaker at the MCG Nets this week. We might come to that at the end of the show in the Hall of Fame, as it were, or the anti-Hall of Fame as it is in this instance. But let's cut to the news as such. So from India's perspective, a team that's won at Melbourne the last two times. They've had success at Melbourne in 2018 and 2020. Two, in different ways, groundbreaking test matches. In 2018, it meant that there was no way they could be defeated in that Border Gavaskar series. And in 2020, it was the having been bowled out for 36, Kohli going home, all against them, only to, under Ajinkya Rahane's outstanding leadership, square the series at 1-1. And, of course, you ended up writing a book about that, as we always remind people. So it's a ground that holds a lot of fond memories for a lot of Indian players. How do you think they're going to shape up? You heard from Rohit Sharma yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that India initially chose not to have a training session today, and then just as I was leaving the MCG, I heard a little whisper that some of them are apparently going to make the most of Christmas Day, and most places in Melbourne being shut, and they're going to head to the MCG and have a bit of a net. I'm not sure who all they will be. But it looks like it should be pretty much the same playing 11 we saw at the Gabba, Adam, with Jadeja, the sole spinner, and Siraj, who started that test match pretty ordinarily in the first innings, but I thought he came and bowled very strongly, or had a strong performance in the second innings, so he should retain his spot as well. And the rest, Rohit Sharma was asked yesterday about whether he will continue batting in the middle order by an Australian journalist, not an Indian journalist. I think it was Daniel Cherney of all people. And Rohit Sharma said, look, I don't have to answer that question every time I come for a press conference, but we know what we're doing. And I can't see them moving away from the decision that Rohit Sharma took about dropping himself down. I thought it was a sacrifice that he made, because now you have to start looking long term as well, don't you? And KL Rahul seems so adept and so much in control of his game now at the top of the order, and complements Jaiswal so well. I can't see them moving it around just because Rohit hasn't scored runs.
Yeah, I mean, there has been some scrutiny on India's top order, I guess, owing to some soft dismissals last week at Brisbane, and Jaiswal missing out in Adelaide as well. But you look at Australia's top four, there's a CricViz stat doing the rounds that they averaged collectively across the first three test matches, 14 Australia's top three. Wow. So, and look, that's been the catalyst for them making the change, the Bumrah effect, having taken that 6-wicket bag at Melbourne in 2018, an unforgettable spell of bowling just before the Melbourne pitch got so good to bowl on. Yes. So you look at the numbers, Australia has been a better country for bowling seam up since roughly the pandemic, or just before the pandemic, perhaps around 2019, 2020 might be the statistical reference point, as the drop-in technology has gotten better, and in Melbourne's case, a change of curator and a lot of work on what they've done in the middle there. But Melbourne, it's roughly 25 per wicket, which is the lowest in the country. So it'll get no easier for the Australians against Bumrah, that's almost certain. But they've made the big call. McSweeney out, as we discussed the other day, Jeff and I. Sam Konstas confirmed as making his test debut at age 18 and 85 days, or sorry, 19 and 85 days, I should say. Another one of these line of Boxing Day debuts. There's a whole list of interesting ones, back to Steve Waugh in 1985 and Brett Lee in 1999. Ed Cowan, it was the most recent opener to debut for Australia on Boxing Day. Another Cranbrook boy, educated
That
at the
is
same
correct.
school that Konstas was. And there's a link there through to Shane Watson as well, who's been his mentor in recent years through club cricket and all the rest of it. But yeah, Konstas, your first impressions hearing him speak with media through the week, watching him bat in the nets, and just generally his demeanour around the group?
Loves it. Looks, sounds, and feels like he's made for the big stage. He just is enjoying himself. I thought I'd be more impressed with his hair, and you know how much hair plays a role in how we judge cricketers, you and me, Adam. So I think yeah, in my opinion, he has a way to go to impress me with the hair game, but everything else about his game looks very exciting. He played a reverse ramp of, albeit of Manas chucking throwdowns at him. In his first ever net as an Australian Test cricketer, or as being part of the Australian Test squad. And you know what he said as soon as he played the reverse ramp? Bowled Bumrah. And so there's this confidence about this kid, the fearlessness that comes from being 18, being 19. And I asked Pat Cummins about Konstas. The first two questions at the press conference was about him, and it was me who asked it. And the first was just about what Pat remembers, about making his Test debut as an 18-year-old, and everything that comes with it. Then I asked him about the fearlessness, if it really does exist. And Pat's answer was, I thought, superb. He said, "Look, I remember thinking I have nothing to lose here, because I thought I had everyone on my side. Even if I fail, the selectors will look like idiots for having picked the 18-year-old." So I'm sure just listening to Konstas speak to the press the other day and just seeing him hang around the Australian group, the way he's indulging in banter with these senior players, and whether it's Uzi or whether it's Manas or Steve, tells me that this kid is really made for the next stage. Now, how he goes against Bumrah is going to be a challenge. I mean, this thing is such a young man and his career is so nascent, but there is this thing that has followed him, that the ball coming into him, he does get into trouble. Sean Abbott did clean
Yep.
bowl him once in the net 2 days ago. Or no, it was yesterday, I should say. But yeah, I mean, all those things can be forgiven for a 19-year-old, like Pat said. It's a big take call from the selectors. It doesn't happen very often in Australia. Happens very often in the subcontinent. Obviously, teenagers thrown into the deep end. But if he can get away, I think if he can get a few balls outside off some which he can just hit away and get a start, who knows? I mean, watch out. But it's not going to get easy against Bumrah. I mean, he's. I saw a stat recently pop up about the number of Australian openers he's claimed already, going back to 2008, starting with Aaron Finch.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sensational record, 28-10. I think we are already in the midst of, they say Botham's ashes. This has the feel of being Bumrah's Border Gavaskar Trophy, doesn't it? With the bat as well the other day, with the ball. It'll take something very, very special, and hopefully Sam Konstas is that special.
Yeah, and look, the fact that Konstas has got some muscle memory making runs against India as well on this tour, the 107 brisk in a different format of the game, really, given it was a one-dayer in the PM's 11, but easily brushed over is the 73 not out that he made in the second of those unofficial test matches when chasing in the fourth innings. So, and there was more riding on that, or it felt like there was more riding on that, because at that particular juncture, the test squad had yet to be announced, I think, from memory. So, yeah, there's, look, yes, we know he's a confident guy. We heard you wrote about the Ricky Ponting answer in the show, the live show that we did with Ricky with Glenn Maxwell's book launch a couple of nights ago in Melbourne. What a night that was. We'll talk more about that on the next weekly show, I'm certain, Jeff and I. But clearly there's a swagger there and a confidence that he's reaching the top level, very early, but he has no doubt about his own ability to succeed at this level. And from a psychological perspective, that can be really important.
Oh, it's at times the most important thing that you need, right? Nathan McSweeney, hard done by, question mark, that is, for being dropped after 3 test matches, maybe, but I think just speaking to people in the know within that team, I think it was more, not so much a case of dropping a batter for his returns. It was more about what they think they need as a group at the top. And the one thing I asked was, is it dynamism? And they said, yes, spot on. We need some dynamism at the top, because at the moment, it's not just that Bumrah's taking wickets. He's taking 20, he's taken 20 wickets at 10. So they're not scoring against him, and they don't look like they're going to score against him. So whatever Konstas has up his sleeve, cannot be worse than what we've seen already. And because
Yep.
of the way Khawaja and Manas bat as well, and I think we're going to see Manas. I spoke about his intent before the Adelaide test, but I have a feeling we're going to see an aggressive Manas this time. At least he's going to try and be aggressive, because it looks like that's what the team want from him. Andrew McDonald said yesterday, we want the annoying Manas in the middle. He can be very annoying, and we want that annoying Manas. So we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to be super fun, and hopefully, look, from an Indian perspective, they'll not want to field tomorrow because it's going to be 40 degrees. But
Yes.
in a way, I think the test match will be set up beautifully if it is young Konstas walking out to bat, 92,000 people at the MCG, and Bumrah running into bowl at him.
It's a huge part of it, isn't it? The sellout on Boxing Day. We've had one of those. I reckon it was 2013, which was officially sold out, and 2006 was a record-breaking day as well. But never for a Border Gavaskar test. Having upwards of 91, 92,000 people at the G will be ridiculous. I think the official capacity for cricket's 93, so that'd be rarefied air if they can get up there. And of course, the previous two highest test totals at the G, well, Calypso Summer, 60-61, the 90,600 that showed up to the first day of the final test at Melbourne, and 91.5, I think it was, on Boxing Day in 2013. 40-degree heat. I'm wearing a hoodie at the moment because my parents' house is the coldest place in the world, but it'll be shirt sleeves and air conditioning for all tomorrow. I'm fairly sure, which could have a role in influencing what India do with their bowling lineup as well. Whether there might be consideration of playing Washington Sundar to partner with Ravindra Jadeja. In a way, that'll be frustrating for Ash, because Ashwin retiring, not expecting to play if they do go with the second spinner, Sundar, but focusing on what's possible now. That would require a change in configuration. India have had the extra seamer the whole way through the series to this point. Akashdeep did a lot right last week as well. It may not have looked like it in the first innings, but you look at the data and where he was landing it and what he was doing with it, he was unlucky by all of those metrics. So I'm certain he'll be there again. Well, I say I'm certain. I mean, it could well come down to, if they want to play a second spinner, it could well come down to Siraj, who made his debut famously at the MCG the last time these teams met in 2020, or maybe Akashdeep, if they do wish to go down the route of playing a second spinner to give themselves a little bit more protection. However, that would work counter to the interests of their seam bowling group on an MCG track that, as I say, in the last 5 or 6 years has given plenty to those bowling seam up, not least Scotty Boland, who on his test debut in 2021 cleaned up with that 6 for. And he's back again as well, of course, because Josh Hazlewood is now out for the series with the injury. So, the question there for India, do they stick with the configuration that's worked more or less so far, or do they do something different and something bold and go for two spinners, as they did at the MCG in 2020?
They did. And that pitch as well, this is before 2021 has been earmarked as the year when batting became difficult in Australia, right? Steve Smith spoke about the change in balls, the new Kookaburra, which stays harder for longer and does a lot more, seems a lot more. And that was also the summer of Boland, wasn't it? The 6 for 7, build the man a statue at the G. So I think the test match you mentioned when Ashwin and Jadeja both played was the year prior to that. And Ashwin played such a big role. I think he came on to bowl within the first 10 overs. Huge. On a damp pitch, took 3 wickets before lunch, and completely changed the complexion of that test match. Australia were bowled out cheaply, less than 200, and then Rahane made that famous 100. So I think the thing, we spoke about this before the previous test as well, like Nitish Kumar Reddy's form with the bat has kind of, in a way, made him undroppable. And he has taken 3 crucial wickets. He's got Manas out twice, and he got another top order batter as well in Perth.
Mitch Marsh, I think it was.
Mitch Marsh, it was, I think. And so he's taken crucial wickets. So I would be very surprised if they move away from their 3 fast bowlers, 1 Jadeja and 1 Nitish Kumar Reddy configuration. I know Rohit Sharma did flirt with the idea because the pitch, and that's going to be the fascinating aspect tomorrow. Hot day, but the pitch will offer something. As Steve Smith mentioned the other day, mainly to me, it has become the most difficult pitch to bat on the MCG. So, and the practice pitches as well these days seem to mirror what you get in the middle of the G, because they have been seaming around a lot, haven't been very easy to bat on. So that's good preparation for both teams. But yeah, I'll be surprised if they go that way. As far as Australia go, you mentioned Scott Boland, the big intrigue this morning was around Travis Head. He
Yes,
batted
wanted to
only
come to that.
15 minutes facing throwdowns yesterday. So today we were all on Trav watch. Everybody was there. So initially we were told he won't bat, and he was just having a run in the middle. And in the middle were all the kids. There were like 50 kids just running around the MCG. And then pretty late in the day, Travis did walk out to bat, and Pat Cummins said, not only that he'll be fit and he will play, but he won't need to be monitored. Especially, it's not going to be a question of where can we put him on the field. So that's good news for Australia and Travis Head.
Oh, huge, considering he's coming off, a runner ball 140 and just under a runner ball 152 last week, coming in at the times where he's able to do his best work around the 40th over or thereabouts. What a blessing in disguise that he ended up batting 5 in this series and not at the top of the list, which at one stage it was mooted. Remember, going back a few months to when we were in England with that one-day series, and that seemed to be the prevailing wisdom coming out of the Aussie camp. So Head to play, although as far as what we were being told, there was no injury to start with, right? There's that usual subterfuge with injuries at the moment, which the Aussie camp do more than most. So that's most of the selection. I suppose when you mentioned Marnus, but Usman Khawaja as well, the other man of the Australian top 3, averaging 22 this year into the final test of the year. He's going to need runs here, Khawaja, in tough circumstances in terms of the pitch in recent years here at Melbourne. But if he misses out here, it'll be a tough moment or two, I think, for the selectors, acknowledging that Sydney's to come, which could theoretically be a jumping off point for him. I don't think anyone's wishing that. No one's death riding Khawaja. It's more that as you sometimes get players towards the end of the career, there can be momentum against them. I don't sense that. It's more that people want him to find a way to maybe make it round one more time and not prompt a second change to the top of the list, which has been a difficult one since David Warner left, finding who they wanted, of course, starting a new player's career this week in Konstas. So there's him. And for all of the credit that Labuschagne earned for batting so well at Adelaide, it feels like a lot of that's been jettisoned with 2 bad dismissals in Brisbane. So as you say, whether he is more purposeful in the way he goes about it or otherwise, there's a stat again from CricViz saying that Marnus's false shot percentage in this series is the lowest in the series. It's just that his runs aren't coming. The narrative, I suppose, there is that he had a lot of good luck early in his career and not getting a lot of good luck now and getting out in ways that reflect that. So a lot of attention on the Aussie top 3 tomorrow for all different types of reasons. We'll just take a pause here, Baz, and then we'll come to something of a Hall of Fame. It's the Final Word Board of Gavaskar Christmas Daily, thanks to Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. We're going to tell you all about them on Storytime 213, which is coming up on, after the Melbourne Test match. Jeff and I will do our annual yearly wrap on the weekly show, and our Storytime episode will be in no small part dedicated to telling the story of Maurice Blackburn. I've learnt enough now that I want to tell more of it, so that's a little nod to what's coming up in the feed. cbussuper.com.au. We've just been talking around the Christmas dinner table today about superannuation with one of my uncles. And just a reminder of how important it is that you have your super affairs in order. Why not get hold of CBUS at the very end of 2024? Get on the right foot for 2025 at cbussuper.com.au. Their past performance, 8.87% on average for 40 years in the default My Super account, is not a reliable indicator of future performance, but take a look, cbussuper.com.au. And last but not least, go to the Kabaddi on the 28th of December. Come along with Jeff and me, the Australian All-Stars, the Australian footy players against the Indian All-Stars over at John Cain Arena. We'll talk more about that on Boxing Day. So I'm going to call this anti-Hall of Fame, where the media wars stoush is up to. Baz, from your perspective, we saw it take another turn yesterday with the allegation of India being fucked over on pitches and that being advanced by certain actors in the media pack. I just want to say my bit before going to you. I feel desperately sorry for our colleagues from the Indian media who do their job diligently and truthfully and accurately. There are so many people that meet that criteria that they have been undermined by some of the behaviour of people who are here to achieve different ends, shall we say, when it comes to clicks and attention. There's one particular attention seeker who's here at the moment in Melbourne who makes that's his point of difference. He's yelling very loudly. And he went on this ridiculous monologue diatribe the other day on camera, which was most embarrassing for him. If he felt embarrassment, he would feel it for that, although I doubt he does. Where my sympathies lie, even though we were the ones that missed the cricket game because of it, and there's all the other miscommunications. Of course, there's miscommunication around what happened with Virat Kohli, and I'm sympathetic to Virat for that because I understand how that could happen and why he might have blown up at that. Wasn't ideal, but I get how it happened. The thing with Jadeja, the late press conference, the complication with the bus coming, the miscommunication there, I get all of that. But the response after that, the 4 or 5 days since, has been ridiculous.
It has, and I think it's another example, more than to anyone else, to me, about how much the Indian media has changed. And you mentioned the ones doing their job, and like the more traditional sense in which the media still goes on with their business. It's the newspapers who send their people here, the cricket websites. But then there's this, it's become like 35% maybe or 40% of what is the Indian media, because you have this 65% of the rest who are like you said, I mean, they are dependent on clicks, they're dependent on YouTube lives, and I mean, good for them. I mean, if that's a way of making money, it's great. But what it does happen is a lot of misinformation just gets floated out there. And what also happens in a country like Australia is they have access to players, and not players in terms of interaction, but they can go up close to the nets, they can go up close to the pitches, they can go up close to and take videos and pictures of everything. And once it's out there, you have no control over it. Like I followed the pitch saga, like that you mentioned, and the curator was very clear in the way, like, they didn't expect them a day early, and the pitches were what it was. Thankfully, though, Rohit Sharma did cop a blow to his knee, but he is playing. Imagine if that had led to him not playing. That would have really blown the roof off.
Yes,
but
indeed.
yeah, I mean, a lot of miscommunication. And also, like I said, there's this generation of Indian media who seem to believe that they are an extension of this Indian team. So, which is what has led to, I mean, the boycott the other day of our media game, as silly as it sounds. But I mean, we had a good time. We had a good center wicket, so we weren't complaining. But I did go back the next day and tell all of them, you just missed out on a grand opportunity to play a game of cricket at the Junction Oval on a good pitch with free beer. Why wouldn't you do that? But anyway, but I think that's what has happened. They feel like an arm of the Indian team who need to stand up for the Indian team for some. Not that the Indian team cares or want anyone to stand up for them, but it's just leading to a lot of this kind of flag waving that happens around the Indian team. And this is not the end. I think you'll hear a lot of reports similar to what we've seen already. It's, I think, also at the same time important that people in the Australian media respond to it smartly. You cannot react to everything that gets put out there by the so-called Indian media, right? So you have to be careful with who you choose, who you think is relevant, and react to that. Because otherwise the back and forth won't stop. And this is what the attention seekers want as well. They want the Australian media to react to them and respond in a similar way, which has happened, which is what has led to all this unnecessary drama over the last few days. So, if you have questions, Australian media, come to me. I'll tell you who is relevant and what is relevant, what is not. Because and it's the same, right? Somebody reports something on social media and it becomes, Indian media have reported the pitches are bad or whatever it is. And, vice versa, both parties need to be careful. But yeah, it just led to a lot of ugliness. Hopefully it all clears up on Boxing Day, but I have a feeling it won't, Colo.
You're right about that. You're spot on about not swinging at every pitch, because some of it is just ridiculous. And, imagine, and this comes back to why I feel sorry for our colleagues who do this job properly. And we're all mates, obviously. Like, this is the other thing that's misunderstood. I reckon there's a perception out there that journos kind of collude together to advance the interest of the team they're covering. That's not really how it works in practice. We're all friends with each other around the cricket media world. It's not that big a world. And that's a sad thing, that there aren't as many people covering cricket as there used to be. Our friendship groups dip in and out of every country. So it's more about, the story that motivates what we're doing and trying to tell the story as well as we can. So the idea of flag waving and being an extension of the team, that's just, it's a very small percentage of people who do the job day to day, round the year, following teams and so on. But there is a cohort here in Australia at the moment who do clearly feel that way. And look, we can go into, what was that? Journalists Without Borders, is that the organisation? And press freedom and all these other complicated elements with India right now. I acknowledge that is tricky terrain for journalists to tread. the reports that came, I think, is it 161st in the world now for press freedom, according to that non-for-profit. That makes the job bloody difficult. I have huge regard, huge respect for the people that come out here and report truthfully and trying to stay as close to the facts as they possibly can in everything they do. And when they provide opinion, they try and do it in a way that that meets the credibility test, right? But yeah, they're the people who've been left out to dry in all of this. And they'll be the first people I go up to tomorrow morning on Boxing Day to say good day to and have a cup of coffee with, because, you know, we love those blokes. And I was going to say blokes and women. There aren't many women in the press box at the moment, which is a whole different thing on this particular series. And we can address that perhaps on another show. But yeah, it's been a rugged week on that front. And Brat, you'll continue to play diplomat and peacemaker, I am sure, on this day of peace and joy, which is Christmas Day. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights. Thanks for being there at training and doing your job when a lot of people wish not to work on Christmas, i.e. me, notwithstanding this episode. And we will catch up for a festive cuddle ourselves tomorrow morning before we crack on at the MCG. Every single day we'll be there on the Final Word feed at Stumps as we do our thing again. We've got one more live show. Our sold-out Melbourne show was an absolute blast. We've got Simon KATICH with with Glenn Maxwell, the other guy, the book, you know, the one we wrote on the 7th of January, night 5. We'd love to see lots of members of the crowd who are coming on day 5, or even if you're not, drop along. There will be a big celebration of Australian-Indian relations there as well. Of course, Simon KATICH not only has played so much against India, but coached in the IPL and has a great understanding of that country. And Maxi, who spends like a third of his life there. So there'll be plenty there for fans of both Australia and India. All right. All that's left to say is drive safe, everybody. If you're listening to this on the road this afternoon or this evening, please drive safe. There's no hurry to get anywhere. Don't have a beer if you're driving. Just don't have a beer at all. You don't need to have one beer. Have a beer when you get home.
Get someone else to drive then.
Get someone else to drive, or have a beer later on. You don't need to have a beer on Christmas Day. It's not compulsory. No. Enjoy the rest of your Christmases, and we will catch up with you tomorrow at the MCG. Bye for now.